TikTok was hours away from being banned in America. 170 million users were about to lose access to the app that dominates their screen time. Creators who'd built million-dollar businesses were panicking. And then, at the very last moment, ByteDance signed a deal that saved TikTok from extinction. But here's the twist. This wasn't just a survival story. This was one of the most controversial tech deals in history. And when you look behind the scenes, the real winners might surprise you. Let me explain. In January 2025, the Supreme Court upheld a law that gave ByteDance, TikTok's Chinese parent company, an ultimatum: sell TikTok's US operations or face a complete ban. The law was clear. ByteDance had to divest at least 80% of its US assets to non-Chinese investors. The reason? National security. American lawmakers were terrified that the Chinese government could use TikTok to collect data on millions of Americans, or manipulate what content they see. For months, TikTok was technically operating illegally. The app should have been shut down, but President Trump, who had actually tried to ban TikTok during his first term back in 2020, kept extending the deadline. He wanted a deal, not a ban. And on December 18th, 2025, that deal finally happened. ByteDance signed binding agreements to transfer control of TikTok's US operations to a new joint venture called TikTok USDS Joint Venture LLC. The investors, Oracle Corporation, private equity firm Silver Lake, and MGX, a state-backed investment firm from the United Arab Emirates. Together, they'd own 45% of the new company. Existing ByteDance investors would hold about 30%, and ByteDance itself would keep just under 20%, the maximum allowed under US law. The deal valued TikTok's US operations at $14 billion, and this is where things get absolutely wild. ByteDance, the parent company, is worth an estimated $500 billion. TikTok has 170 million American users, half the country. It generates billions in advertising revenue. Back in 2020, Microsoft was willing to pay over $50 billion for TikTok. Elon Musk paid $44 billion for Twitter, which has way less engagement. And Snap, a platform that's nowhere near as popular as TikTok, is currently valued around the same $14 billion figure. So why would one of the most valuable digital platforms on Earth sell for what experts are calling a fire sale price? Ashwin Binwani, founder of Alpha Binwani Capital, called it potentially the most undervalued tech acquisition of the decade. He told Bloomberg that by every major financial metric and peer comparison, this price tag looks dramatically misaligned with reality. But here's the genius part, or the controversial part, depending on who you ask. ByteDance isn't really giving up control at all. According to Bloomberg, ByteDance will collect up to 50% of TikTok US's profits through licensing fees and profit-sharing agreements. Why? Because ByteDance still owns the algorithm, the secret sauce that makes TikTok addictive. The new US entity will license that algorithm and retrain it on American data, but ByteDance gets paid handsomely for it. Some reports suggest they'll charge a licensing fee worth 20% of all incremental revenue generated by the algorithm. This is where the deal gets murky. Jim Secreto, a former Treasury official who worked on TikTok policy during the Biden administration, was blunt. He said the deal doesn't meet the standard Congress set. The law requires a clean break from ByteDance. This structure doesn't meet that standard. It looks more like a franchise deal that leaves TikTok's core technology in China than a true divestment. Even members of Congress are questioning whether this qualifies as a real sale. Republican Representative John Moolenaar, who chairs the House Select Committee on China, said the law set firm guardrails that prohibit cooperation between ByteDance and any prospective TikTok successor on the all-important recommendation algorithm. But Oracle will only be monitoring and retraining a copy of the algorithm, not owning it outright. And then there's the political angle. Oracle is run by Larry Ellison, one of Trump's biggest supporters. His son David Ellison runs Paramount Skydance. MGX, the Abu Dhabi investment firm in the deal, recently invested $2 billion into the Trump family's cryptocurrency platform, World Liberty Financial. Senator Elizabeth Warren called it crony capitalism, tweeting, "Trump wants to hand over even more control of what you watch to his billionaire buddies." The connections run deep. Other investors reportedly include Rupert Murdoch, Michael Dell, and Jeff Yass, who also owns a stake in Trump's Truth Social. These are all people with close ties to the administration, and Trump personally extended the ban deadline 4 times to make this deal happen. So what does this mean for TikTok's 170 million American users? On the surface, not much changes. The app stays operational, creators can keep posting. Businesses that depend on TikTok for marketing can breathe easy. The deal is set to close on January 22, 2026, and TikTok CEO Shou Chew assured employees that there's more work to be done. But the hard part is over. However, there's a catch. Oracle will retrain the algorithm using only US user data. That's 170 million users instead of TikTok's global 1.6 billion users. That's a dramatically smaller dataset, which could mean the US version of TikTok becomes less accurate, less engaging, and frankly, less good at showing you content you actually want to see. And there's another concern. Oracle, an American company with deep ties to the US government, will now have oversight of the algorithm. Some experts worry about government influence over what Americans see on their feeds, just in a different direction. As Georgetown law professor Anupam Chanda put it is possible that the American TikTok might end up censoring or hiding speech that is permissible on the global TikTok platform. The deal still needs approval from Chinese regulators, and Beijing has remained suspiciously quiet. Trump claimed that Chinese President Xi Jinping agreed to the sale back in September, but China's foreign ministry has only said their position on TikTok is consistent and clear, without elaborating. If China blocks the deal, the whole thing falls apart. But assuming it goes through, this is one of the most fascinating business moves in recent history. ByteDance avoided a catastrophic ban while retaining nearly half the profits. Trump's allies secured control of one of America's most influential platforms at a massive discount. And 170 million Americans get to keep their favorite app, even if it might not work quite as well as it used to. As entrepreneur Grant Cardone told Newsweek, TikTok owns the most valuable real estate on the planet right now: people's eyeballs. And now, after years of threats, bans, lawsuits, and negotiations, that real estate is officially American-owned. Well, sort of. So the next time you're scrolling through TikTok at 2 a.m. watching videos you definitely don't need to see, remember, you're using an app that was worth $50 billion a few years ago, just sold for $14 billion, and the original owners are still making billions from it. That's not just survival, that's one of the smartest business deals, or the most controversial backroom arrangement, depending on your perspective, in tech history.